One of the most important parts of a book, in my opinion, has got to be the cover because it says everything about what you're getting into. Not only is it the most eye-catching part, and people do, in fact, judge books by their covers, your homegirl included, it says a lot about the content, the tone, expectations, what you're getting into, like I said. So this is going to be featuring a new author who wrote a book, a very, very new book that I just read and really liked called The Design of Books by Debbie Berne. This is going to be sort of like a TLDR version of this book, but if you want to go in depth with all the nitty gritty details, I would highly encourage you to check this out. One thing that I thought was good that she talked about is that when it comes to book design, it's not just about the cover, it's also about the interior. A Word document and the inside of a book look nothing alike. So who is it that makes it all pretty and readable and stuff on the inside? Book designers. So the point of a book cover, according to Debbie, is to convey the type of book or the genre of book that you're getting into, and this is done a couple different ways depending on if they're fiction or nonfiction. You can bet that any kind of white cover is going to most likely be a nonfiction book. I have a couple examples here. This includes The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, this includes Build by Tony Fadell, and this includes Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and I apologize if I mispronounced that author's name, versus fiction, which tends to be a lot more expressive and imaginative. And I have a couple other examples that I'm popping up on the screen here. Cassandra in Reverse, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and The City of Bones. These are just some that were featured in her book. Now, when it comes to nonfiction, this is all about featuring the title. And if the content in the book is going to be more abstract in content or in subject matter, then typically what would happen in the case of like Malcolm Gladwell, for example, is that there would be some literal object to represent an abstract idea. So what's really cool about his book, The Tipping Point, is that the cover of this book, apparently, I didn't know this, was so widely popular that it became the template for concept-driven nonfiction book covers for years, which is just super cool and one heck of a compliment in my opinion. Now with fiction, like I mentioned, this tends to be a little more creative, expressive, imaginative, and the titles of fiction books don't have subtitles, versus nonfiction. These titles tend to be a little more ambiguous, it's more of a mystery, but the point is to have a cover that illustrates what you're getting into. It's hoping to communicate a very immersive story because that's what fiction is really all about. It's about the story versus nonfiction, which tends to be more about the approach, the perspective, the solution, the facts, etc. Now, one thing that I didn't know about is something called the creative brief, and if I understand correctly, this is mostly common for traditional publishing houses. Traditional publishing houses, in case you don't know, are presses that authors work with. They pitch their books to agents. The agents communicate with publishing houses in hopes of getting the almighty book deal. And then from there, you communicate with a team of people who produce your book for you. And in exchange, you get a very, very small cut of the royalties from those book sales. At most, it's going to be around 10%. So this is very common for traditional publishing houses, and this is created with input from the entire team. This includes you, this includes your editor, this includes the art director, maybe the publisher, the marketing team, etc. And the point of a creative brief is to pretty much get everyone on the same page. It's going to be the deliverable for the book designer, whether they're in-house or freelance, to give them some kind of idea of what it is that you all have in mind for this book. But if I'm a designer and I'm getting this brief to design a book cover, I might want to have a little more context beyond just what they're wanting from me. So in the case of nonfiction, I might read a chapter or two of a very rough draft or of, one of the earlier versions just to get more of a sense of the author's voice, of the type of subject matter, etc. And then using both of those pieces, I would be able to create a couple of comps. In the case of fiction, the author's voice and style will influence the cover design. So what's included in a creative brief is the cover copy, which has to do with the title, the subtitle, if there's any taglines like the Finer Things Club, a memoir, for example, any blurbs, additional credit, which is like who the photographs were by, if yours has pictures in it, if there was a foreword written, if your book was translated. Any kind of front cover copy is going to be included in the creative brief. You also have specs, which has to do with the size of your book. This is trim size, this is if it's paperback or hardcover, this is if there's going to be a jacket, if it's printed in color or black and white. Your sales copy or your synopsis, this is just some kind of description of the book, of generally what it's about, something that highlights some of the most salient points in a book or aspects of a book if it's fiction. Who the audience is, which just all around is good to know for cover design, for marketing, for the angle of your book, etc. I feel like you should know this from the beginning. Who your audience is, comps, and these comps have to do with competitive or comparable titles. I like to think of them more as comparable because competitive sounds like we're all in a race together or something, but we're all just here to make a good book. So books that are similar to you, either in audience, in subject matter, or maybe even style. And then lastly, any kind of design direction that you feel is important to communicate. This could be anything from the specific style or mood that you're going for, or any other like illustration examples or whatever that you'd like to go off of based off like other books in your genre that you've maybe seen. Now, when it comes to the process and how books are in fact designed, there's actually two. There's going to be a process for book covers, and there's going to be a process for the interior design, which is like how the book looks on the inside. Now, if these book designs are taking place in-house, like within a publisher, like on a publisher's team, or a publisher is hiring out freelance or something like that, they might have their own schedule, they might have their own rhythm and flow, they might have their own demands, schedule, specific stuff. I don't know. It's just going to depend. But very, very generally, this is what Debbie Berne says is very typical of the cover and interior design process. Now, pardon me, I'm going to be kind of looking up and down. There's just a lot of steps, and there's no way I can memorize them all. So in terms of cover design, number one, there's going to be an internal launch. They're going to say, okay, it's time to make a book cover, and this is usually going to take place, I would say, somewhat early on in the book publishing process. They might very well start making a book cover before the actual book has been finished, like being edited or something. When I was getting published, it happened a lot sooner than I thought it would. Anyway, there's going to be an internal launch of, hey, okay, it's time to make the book cover. Step two is they are going to review that design brief, that creative brief that has all the really good nitty-gritty information in it. A designer is going to be assigned, whether it's in-house or freelance. And the fourth step is that based on that information, the designer is going to make a couple initial cover designs, or comps, as I've sometimes heard them called. From there, there's going to be a lot of in-house feedback and revisions based on that creative team. If the art director wants to have a say, if, I don't know, the editor or someone wants to have a say, the marketing team, whatever, there's just going to be a lot of in-house revisions happening. This is going to happen as often as it's needed until finally the team thinks it's good enough to present to the author. And then from there, the author is going to offer feedback and revision, and that's going to kind of repeat as necessary until it gets to the point where an author really likes it. Now, what's really important in this space is to not get too particular. You want it to be what you want. It's not going to be perfect, but you want it to be as close to what you're envisioning as is reasonable. From there, the cover design is going to maybe be shared with different team members, if this is the sales team, any buyers, distributors. I've even seen in like trade reviews, like Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, Library Journal, Booklist, those are very popular publications that review books prior to their publication. And this is mostly used for like libraries and bookstores to acquire new books. Sometimes books are reviewed without a cover. You know, there'll be like a little note or something that's like, hey, cover design to be revealed at a later date or something like that. So they may be shared with, trade reviewers and stuff. If not, there's going to be a little note that says it's going to be coming out later. There may possibly be more feedback and revisions based on what they have to say. And then finally, when all is said and done, you're going to have the final front cover. And I think that like the front cover is equivalent to like the first 10 pages of a book. Like it's either going to be the thing that makes them pick it up or put it back on the shelf, So it's like you want to be meticulous about it, you want to be intentional about it, you want it to just communicate a lot in a very concise, easy, almost scannable, understandable way. And that's like a whole lot of that's a whole lot of pressure. I'm not going to lie. So any book designer who like thrives on that type of energy, I mean, applause. You are definitely in the right line of work, I feel like. And I actually looked at Debbie Berne's website, and she had some really, really cool cover design. Even like her whole website is just really cool. Her book cover is really cool. I just like her taste all around. She knows what she's doing. And then as far as the interior cover design goes, there's going to be a very similar process. So step one is that there's going to be a sample design made or some kind of template chosen to, create, assign to a designer, and then eventually give to the editors to review for feedback, or maybe even the author too. From there, you might come up with a second few pages or something like that. You're going to proofread those pages, you have third pages, and just for the record, I don't know if she means literally first page, literally second page, or if she means the first few pages, the second few pages after that. I don't know. But anyway, you're going to proofread it, and then eventually there's going to be a final review by the editor and the author. If there's any indexing that needs to happen, that's where that's also going to take place. And actually, fun fact, So I don't know if you've heard of that program called WOOF, WOOF, and it's like WWOF, and it's like Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms or something like that. Back when I was in college and traveling and like finding myself and stuff, I stayed on a farm in northern Idaho with a woman who literally indexed for a living, which I thought was so cool. I thought that was so cool. Me as an aspiring author, I'm like, oh my God, like teach me your ways. And anyway, that's what she did for a living. So these are literally jobs that people have, is to like collect all the information from the book and outline it in like the back few pages. So if you're interested in breaking into the book space, there's a slot for you if you like technical type writing stuff. There's going to be any final corrections. These files are eventually going to be sent to the printer. Proofs are going to be reviewed, and in fact, I still have a copy of my proof of my book, so I'm going to go grab that, show you what that looks like. I was looking all over for this book and I realized that it was on my back shelf. So this is what the proof copy is, and what you'll see is that there's going to be this little ribbon across it that's going to say something like not for resale, or it'll say like proof or something like that. And this is basically what you review before your book officially goes to print. This is where you're going to kind of flip through it, take a look at the inside, make sure that everything is formatted the way that you want, the cover design looks good, the placement of like any little bits and pieces like the pictures and stuff on here look good. This is basically your copy to review. Make any additional final changes before it's eventually up and available for print, in which case that would be your launch day or your book's release day. So there is an opportunity to review a physical copy that usually your publisher will send you. You review it. If you're self-publishing, you can do this through Amazon or Ingram. Yeah, Ingram. And basically from there, the books are going to be printed and bound, depending on maybe what their printing style is, which apparently there's multiple. So more learning opportunities. We're going to be talking about that in a second. I got to put this back. Okay, so once all of that's been done, it's time for production. And basically, this is where your books are going to start physically being made. There's a couple different ways to do this, depending on if you're working with a press, what size that press is, or maybe if you're self-publishing. So newly published trade books might have offset lithography. I didn't know what that was, but basically this is efficient and high quality printing that produces thousands of impressions per minute. It sounds really impressive, but it makes me wonder if that's the same thing as like the warehouse storage where, you know, a publisher might do like a, you know, X thousand print run, like a 5,000 print run or something. They'll print 5,000 copies of a book, store them in a couple different warehouses so that by the time the book is released, they already have like chunks and chunks of, I don't know why I said chunks, but they have like a lot of books to pull from. That way, if they sell really well, they do another print run, and that's good. You want another print run. Otherwise, if it doesn't sell as well as they think, you don't want to have too much left over, because what happens to those leftover books is they'll get turned into pulp or they'll get shredded or something. I don't know. It's really sad, but it makes me wonder if offset lithography is like that same thing or not. But anyway, apparently that's for new trade books. There's print on demand, which is very popular for self-publishing, maybe even some small presses. Print on demand is a very, very popular option, which is where books are printed as they're ordered. There is no like warehouse or offset lithography. That sounds really fancy. And a new type of printing that I hadn't heard of is called short-run digital printing, or SRDP, which are short digital print job runs that a lot of small presses use. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole and learn a thing or two more about short-run digital printing, that's something that you can, I don't know, nerd out about. Anyway, I just thought that this would be something that's kind of cool and informative to talk about. I hope you got something out of it. If you nerd out about book design, cover design, sort of like the physical making of a book, then I think this is something that you would really get a lot out of. If you're interested in learning more about cover designs, you should definitely check out Chip Kidd's TED Talk. It's very entertaining, very informative. He does a really, really great job. He just has a wonderful stage presence. And his talk is called Designing Books is No Laughing Matter, and he was responsible for making the all-famous Jurassic Park logo, and he talks about his process for that, how all that came to be. So be sure to check out those resources, and please buy Debbie's book. If you check out the reviews, it's got a lot of good reviews. Anyway, I hope you got something out of this video. If you have any other questions or things that you want me to talk about, feel free to drop it in the comments below. But if you have any other additional thoughts, also feel free to drop those down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.